Welcome, everyone, to the Feminine Outliers podcast, your dose of fun, life advice, and experiences from two African professional women living and working in the Western world. We are your hosts, Cholwe Mandona
and Zelda Wasau.
And we are excited to have you here today, this week. So, welcome, everyone. This is an exciting week. I like the topic that we are going to be discussing. I think it's an overdue topic, and the topic of the week is building generational wealth. Whew.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it's I just have so many thoughts around this topic, and I am so excited to dive into it. Zell, I would love to hear your thoughts on it, and we'll just go from there. But but before we get started on that, before I even say anything, because I'm really, really excited about it, I will start off with the unlearning pieces for the week. I'm going to start here, what my unlearning is. So I am unlearning that someone else's solution or strategy may not apply to me or to you. So, and also maybe I can add on to this is that there are so many ways to solve a problem or a challenge. Pretty much that is what I'm learning. I guess in the past I did, when I did seek advice from people, even people that have had experience, or my mentors or my coaches, when they give advice or a strategy, I think I took that as gospel truth, and perhaps it was out of lack of experience. So to me, I was relying on these individuals as my North Star, and saying, wow, like whatever they're saying is quote unquote the truth, and that's something I should apply. Like I didn't really think about how, about myself per se. Like I didn't think about what the result would be for myself. Would I like that solution? Would I like the outcome? Would I be in a better place if I took on their advice? And even if the advice was positive. But now I'm coming to realize that their advice is just one more strategy to the pool of several strategies. And it's just a suggestion. It really is a suggestion. Even from the most experienced individual, their advice is still a suggestion. Because if I see things differently and my mind is settles on things in a different way, and the way I feel about things is not similar to them, then it just might not work the same way. I might get some results, but I might not be as happy with those results because those results don't represent my true self. So I think the key takeaway is that just because you get a solution, it is not the solution until you decide that it is the solution for you, because it's the best way to approach the problem or challenge or whatever you're going through your life. So there needs to be a moment to pause and reflect, process, and then decide. So it's not a direct, this person told me this, so this must be true, so I must go ahead and do that.
Hmm. Sorry, I had to really follow along without getting lost because I was like, wait, there's so many small things I'm trying to
Ah,
pinpoint, and then I'm like, oh, she talks about something else, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So I will try to summarize or wrap up my thoughts on that. Essentially, you're saying someone else's solution might not be necessarily what works for you, and it's
yeah.
true. Like, um, there could be multiple solutions out there, and that's when it comes down to knowing yourself
Mm,
and knowing what works best for you. But you have to know yourself first, if before you actually
mhm,
figure out what solution works best for you. Because I get that, and for me, how that really comes into play is the fact is when I, for example, when it comes to fitness and health,
mhm,
someone will tell you this is the way to lose weight, this is a way to be healthy, this is a way to exercise, this is a way to do stuff.
mhm,
But you know yourself ultimately, and so if you like, for me, I know I'm a homebody. I don't
mhm,
necessarily enjoy going to the gym.
mhm,
um so someone saying you have to go to the gym or you have to go to do these classes, you have to do this, it's not realistic to me because I have to stay true to myself. And so it's just having that knowledge of self that is so important. So that will help guide which solution to take. And it's so true. The times in which people say this is what you should do because this will solve your problem, and then you realize that, um, hey, no, you know, it might not necessarily
mhm,
work for me. And I also have fallen guilty to that whole entire thing of I just take someone's word for it. And it
mm,
doesn't mean that that solution doesn't work. It just might
yeah,
not work as well for you.
mhm,
So,
yeah,
um, yeah, I just feel like it just comes down to knowing yourself
mhm,
best because that will help determine what solution you take from there. So, yeah, that's
mm.
my take on your situation.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Well summarized. So that means I made sense, though. Um, that means I made sense. I'm glad. What are you unlearning?
Lol. No, literally, my mind was like, Joel is talking about a lot of different things, and I'm trying to like, and I'm trying to get them all in my head at once.
I know, I know. I've been
um,
going different places, but we landed. It was a safe landing. That's what it
with
sounds
safe
like.
landing, it's a 10 out of 10 landing.
Thank you. Thank you.
So my, oh, I guess I would say what I am learning this week. Today, I'm gonna do a learning segment. Is that gifts and talents come in all different shapes, sizes, styles, ways. They present yourself in a different, in any kind of manner. And to me, that was very encouraging because the reason why I thought about this is because, as Chole knows, I am a very much an Olympic like fan. I love the Olympics.
Mm,
It's one of my favorite things to watch. I'd always watch it growing up, and I'm watching the Olympics. I mean, I've been watching the Olympics here, and because I'm in the US, I also get to see it from the US channels in addition to other channels. And Snoop Dogg
mm,
is in Paris right now, and he has been attending multiple events that Team USA is participating in. And the guy
mm,
is such a great commentator. Like, he's not an official like commentator because he can't officially like tell you, oh, the technical score, or this contributed to the technical score of a gymnast solution, or this is what the horse was doing an equestrian, you know, equestrian, I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, like,
mhm,
race. He can't tell you exactly that, but he just give you a fun commentary commentary from
mm,
his perspective. It is so hilarious. Like, literally everyone
mm,
is saying he's a commentator we did not know we needed. Because just think about his hip hop background, his the way he is, and the humor he brings. It's so on point. It's so funny. Like, he'll just say
mm,
things you're just like, where the hell did he think about that? And you listen to him over listening to official commenter who knows what they're talking about, because
Yeah.
his is just so entertaining. And who knew that this gift of his would actually um come in handy now? Like he
Mhm.
literally is like the unofficial mascot of the US that they didn't know they needed. Because he
Mhm.
literally, all the different sports, gymnastics, swimming, equestrian, skateboarding, team climbing, he's like just has all these random ass comments that are so hilarious and they just fit so well. And he's
Yeah.
taking pictures, when he's acting like he's pretending to be a fencer and he's talking with the team. It's just so hilarious. Like, it's so entertaining. And
Mhm.
I feel like that's a gift that you wouldn't think about it, because you would think you need an official person who knows what they're doing and stuff. But that's like a gift that is kind of like under the radar gift that
Mhm.
has
Yeah.
really, really come to, um, really has blossomed during this time of the Olympics. And it just made me encouraged, because it made me realize that we all probably have those gifts that we may not necessarily be aware of, or maybe we're aware of, but we're kind of undermining.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a place for them. There's a place and a
Mhm.
time for them. You just have to
Mhm.
find where they're best suited and what time, you know, is it best to bring that gift out for them to
Mhm.
blossom. Because that's exactly what I thought about. Because I'm like, I've watched a lot of Olympics and I haven't seen him comments like this in the past before. He
Mhm.
and I'm like, it's just literally is so entertaining. Like, I hate is when I have to sit down and watch them sit and like talk about, oh, this is a summary what happened today, blah 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 blah. But now it's actually entertaining to sit down, because when they say Snoop Dogg is coming on scene, you just
Mhm.
know it's going to be entertaining whatever he says. And then when they do flashbacks of what he did during the day, it's just so entertaining. So I feel like it's just encouraging me to, not undermine my gifts at all, and know that there's a time and there's a place for them. And
Mhm.
yeah.
Wow. Nice one. Yeah, I remember you shared that with me, and I was laughing when you said something like slide and cut. Like I was like, wait, what? Like it was just like the words that he was using were just funny. Like he, as you said, he probably wasn't given like technical terms as much, but just
Hmm.
sort of like his own observation and using, as you said, his language. Um, yeah, that was funny. The clip you sent me was hilarious. Um, but you are certainly right around this undermining our gift, especially when it just like comes natural to us. Um,
Hmm.
and I'm just thinking perhaps the thing that we don't do with that is we just don't, as you said, find the place. We don't put in the effort to find the place where that gift can be applied. Um,
Hmm.
and we're just like, oh yeah, I just this is what I you know do, but we're not sort of putting in that work. And this learning actually sort of works well with my unlearning, in the sense that this is where, like, about just stick to your lane. Like, if something works for you, it works for you, and then you just make you know make your contribution to the world in your lane with what you're gifted with. But the key thing is you have to put in the time and effort to find the space where it can be appreciated. So good one, Zell.
Hmm.
Good one.
Yep.
Okay.
Very
Yeah.
much an Olympic theme, which
Oh
I
man,
had to mention I had to mention it.
every time recent this whole week, every time you send me a voice note, it's like, Zell, I'm just hearing your TV in the background. And I'm like, this girl is watching the Olympics. And then you send me a text and you're like, Cholwe, Zambia has won. Okay, congratulations, by the way. I'm excited. And then you send me another message about somebody else. And then you're telling me, I think you should do race walking. Um, and I'm just like, you are really an avid supporter, so Olympic supporter. So the next time I'm around you, we need to have an Olympics like watch party or something like that.
It's going to be in the US next in 2028.
Snap. Okay, so I'm in. Whatever that means. We're done.
It's going to be in Los Angeles.
Okay, I'm in. We're coming. The Feminine Outliers are coming to Los Angeles
To Los Angeles.
2028.
Uh-huh.
Because you would be a vibe. I think you would be a vibe, Zell. Because you would be like, yes, let's do this and let's do this. And because you have the personality of like, why can't we just have everything in the world? I'm sure you would want to go to as many games
Right?
as possible. I see this happening. Um, so let's make a plan. Actually, let's do this. 2028, we're in. Um, so okay. On to the topic of the week: building generational wealth. Um, it's actually exciting that we're talking about this topic because I
Hmm.
don't think this phrase generational wealth was in my vocabulary until like I want to say maybe 3 4 years ago. I'm not sure. But it's not something that I personally grew up thinking about generational wealth. It only became real for me when I started to learn about money, finances, investments, um, and just the mindset that comes with how I spent my money. That's when I was like, oh, generational wealth. And then it became trendy on social media using the term generational wealth. And I was like, huh. So at this particular point, for me, it's a normal phrase. It's not like generational wealth. What is that? But however, I'm usually brought back down to planet Earth when I'm having conversations with people and they don't, I don't know, the way they view their money and the way they see their money is not the way I view it now. And so I just thought, what are we doing in our community, like back home, even people here in the diaspora? How are we viewing the way we spend our money, and are we thinking about our kids, grandkids, and the other generations to come, after us? So yeah, that's what I thought we could, have a chat about, Zell, and see where we land on this one. Um, did you
And
know
just a
about?
disclaimer, just
Oh,
a
yeah,
small disclaimer. This is from our perspective. We're still also learning about this topic, so we're just giving you our viewpoint on it.
that's very true. Thank you, Zell. That's a good one. That's a good reminder. Yes. So, yeah, let's get started here. So, I guess I was gonna ask you, Zell. Did you know about generational wealth, like just in general, like living while you're living your best life?
While I'm living my best life. um, uh, I never really thought as much technically about generational wealth. Now, did I see a little bit of it? Yes, but not in the a way I'd consider it now. So, like what I saw growing up was a big thing was having land.
Mm,
Um, so growing up, it wasn't as popular in the sense that not many of my um, friends or family friends, grandparents had land because if you think about it, our grandparents grew up during colonization. So a lot of
mm-hmm,
them didn't really have access to huge plots of land or something that they can consider them themselves, their own. I did have a neighbor who their grandfather owned a lot of land.
mm,
And he was the first one I heard of who, I guess in Kenyan context, that means you're rich. He had a lot of
Mm,
land. So that was, I remember the first time hearing it because I know that our neighbor was actually staying on their land. Was actually one of the, even our land actually was actually
mm,
owned by, we bought it, it was bought from their grandfather. So he, and I that was not as common because this is a grandparent who is much, as I said, you grew up in colonial times, so a lot of them didn't have this much land. But that was the
mm-hmm,
first time I heard of a grandparent kind of passing down land to the the kids. I mean, their
mm,
kids. I mean, because
mm-hmm,
their kids, and then the ones who are my age mates are obviously the parents are the ones who have the houses and stuff. So that
mm-hmm,
was my first experience. I was like, oh, that's cool, but it wasn't common again. And now I think it's going to be more common now. People
mm-hmm,
actually have more access and ability to buy land. But that was my first thinking of it. And also
mm-hmm,
later on, I found out that my grandfather also had land. Now, he didn't have as much land as our neighbor's grandfather, from my understanding, but
mm,
he also bought land, which in a sense means he was kind of smart for someone in his time. Like
mm-hmm,
he basically had a good life compared to a lot of other
mm,
people, and so he decided to buy land. So that was when I thought about generational wealth. I thought about land. That's
mm,
that's the only thing I really thought about. Now, what you do with the land and all that stuff, now that's a whole other scenario that now I can speak more to it than I couldn't speak to it back then. But
mm-hmm,
it was mostly just tied in with having land. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, as soon as you said land, I was like, wait a minute. Yes, generational wealth. Okay, so people probably don't use the term generational wealth. Uh, it's
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like that. That is not typically, or that has not been typically used. But the principle behind it is there, and you just pointed that out. Land. And I think it's something that I've seen even in the African communities, and even immigrants in the diaspora when they think of, okay, what am I going to do? Maybe with the money that I earn, I'm going to buy land back home. And so I think sometimes there's even this, I don't know what I would say, like a confusion or a conflict to say, I work in this country, I work in a country that's not my home country, but I am, but I want to somehow leave something for my kids. And so the idea is, okay, let me purchase land back home. And I think it's a common occurrence, at least in the circles I've been. The idea of buying land has always been this thing of that's the next thing you need to do. Um, and My only thing with that is I think it's great to sort of think about storing your investments, I guess, in something that's long term, like land. But as you rightly put it, I feel like that doesn't always come with uh, a full comprehension of other ways you can invest and how money works. People are just sort of repeating the pattern without really thinking about, is this really a good investment for me at this point in time?
Mm-hmm.
So I was just kind of thinking like, what is my money mentality to begin with? Because it's just so easy to say buy land, and then what after I buy the land? Okay, I keep it for myself, but then do I put something on the land? Do I set up a business on the land, a house? Then what do I do? And I think there's also just this concept of, okay, you put something on the land, and then you rent it out, and then that rent becomes your money maker, I guess. um
Mm-hmm.
but it just always seems like that's like the mainstream form of investment for people in our communities. I'm not sure if that's what you see.
No, I see that. I see it's a big thing. And like even I saw it even in my parents' generation how when they became wealthy or they had good money, the first thing they do was buy their own piece of land and then build their house on their land.
Mm.
So I feel like land is a big thing, at least in Kenya. Um,
Mm.
it seems to be a really big, like, important thing in related to status and all that, because I guess it's your land. So ultimately speaking, in the end, I guess your kids and your grandkids can inherit it, when you pass away or something like that. But my problem is, I feel like we have the concept of land um, in, I'd like to say in Africa, but let me just be specific in Kenya, because at least I
Mm.
can speak for what I've seen in Kenya. We have
Mm.
the concept of land being part of generational wealth, which it is. But we just
Mhm.
don't know the concept we are lacking is, what do we do with the land?
Mm.
That to me is where the disconnect comes in,
Mhm.
because you just have the land sitting there. So what exactly is it
Yeah.
sitting there doing? I know land appreciates, and I know you'll probably be able to get more out of it if you sell it. But a lot of times
Mhm.
these old people are not going to sell their land.
Mhm.
So they die, and then that's when the kids get the land. And
Mhm.
then maybe that's when the kids will benefit from the land. But that might be like when the kids are also grandparents themselves, or old or something. Like, it's not really, it's like more of like an inheritance kind of thing, which,
Mhm.
that's the only way I've seen, that's the most popular way I've seen the land being used is, oh, you'll inherit it afterwards. So it's not really in a sense benefiting you, because
Mhm.
you get it as part of your inheritance when you're old and you don't have much to do with the land. You don't know what to do with the land yourself, or maybe you don't even have money to deal with it. So
Mhm.
some people might actually sell the land, which that could be smart, because you could get money off of the land. But a lot of
Mhm.
people haven't really used the land to generate wealth. I
Right.
think that's
Yeah.
where I've seen it's just the whole, oh, the land will sit there and then you'll inherit it and then it'll go and be passed on. And then maybe you can sell the land when you inherit it. But a lot of people haven't actually used it actively to just generate wealth. I don't know if it could be having a farm, planting, selling crops, being a farmer, and selling, I don't know, tea, whatever it is that you sell, that
Mhm.
could generate wealth.
Mhm.
And I know that could be a big thing. At least in Kenya, it is. Agriculture is a huge department. Or could it
Mhm.
mean selling? I mean, building apartments and renting them out, and then
Mhm.
making money off of that, or maybe building a business complex or something. That's usually
Mhm.
where I feel like the translation to how does this land generate wealth is where I've seen it lacking, because a lot of people have land, but they're so
Mhm.
poor. And in my head, I'm like, well, why are you poor? Why? I mean, you
Mm.
have the land. Have you not tried to use it smartly? But a lot of times it's also people just want to hold on to it because it's a bit of status, and you can be like, I
Mhm.
have land, but
Yeah.
what are you doing with it?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's that conversion of, as you said, the land into something, into money. Because I there's almost this separation, as you said. I like the way you said it. Some people own land, but they're poor, and I think the maybe the question to ask is, how do you mean by poor? Because what comes to my mind is they don't have liquidity, so they don't have cash, they don't have money to actually, they might say, I don't have money to work on the land, but I do have the land
Mhm.
as status and maybe as like a backup to sell it when I don't have cash. And so I think
Mhm.
it's sort of uh reveals the root of the issue here is we are not knowledgeable about money, like how to handle cash, like money, and we're not knowledgeable about like money markets, like financial markets, like how does money flow in the economy, because that is a very key that is a very key aspect to actually make money, to actually generate wealth. Um,
Mhm.
so I think that's something we're lacking. Um, and something I want to state, because I was actually looking over the internet just before we started, and um, I read it was in a UN United Nations article that mentioned that about 100 billion. So I'm gonna repeat so that you don't get it wrong. About $100 billion was sent to the African continent in 2022. And I'm like, okay, so the money is moving. Clearly, there's money movement, and I'm just like, where is that money going?
Mhm.
Because that's a that's serious. That's a serious amount of money, or at least a lot of money. And I'm just like, there is something where we're not converting that money to work for us to do more. And this is I wanna definitely make a disclaimer here that I'm not um as knowledgeable in economics. So obviously there are other factors at play, but I'm just
Mhm.
thinking, how do you think we view money, and are we setting our do we have limitations, and are we self-sabotaging ourselves in some way? If we just look at it from like person to person instead of looking at it from economics. But yeah.
Mm. No, I think this is where we fall short because we're not really taught much about money, how
Mm,
it works, where it comes from, how to generate it. Um, that's kind of lacking in the system. Now, I don't fully blame the system. I don't fully blame our parents, our grandparents, because I also know where they're coming from, and they're coming
mm,
from a generation. For example, if you think about your parents, um, when dealing with your grandparents, probably did not have much to teach them because, as I said, they grew up doing colonization. That was probably not a thing back then.
mm,
So they didn't have a concept or grasp on money as such. So what they passed on to your
mhm,
parents was probably limited. And so in the same manner, what your parents passed on to you is is relatively limited. It's more
mhm,
they have a better scope because they've had more opportunities than their parents, so your grandparents,
mhm,
but they still they probably were learning a lot on the job. And a lot of times they
mm,
were learning towards the as the older they got and they realized, wait a minute, oh, wait, this doesn't have to be like this, or this doesn't have to be like that, because they were trained in a certain way. They had a certain mindset going into things in regards to money. And then
mhm,
it took them a while to realize, after years of working, wait a minute, no, this could possibly be done a certain way. But usually at that
mhm,
time, a lot of them have kids, they're taking care of their kids. It's just harder to make the changes that is necessary. So I
mhm,
feel like that's where we just fall short. So I get it. I get why we don't know, because a lot of times we're dealing with young countries, youngish countries, that gained
mhm,
independence in, like, I know Kenya was in 1963. So it's like when the country's being built, it's not as easy for people to pass down generational wealth because if you don't know about it, then you won't pass it down. Now I feel
mm,
like our generation and beyond are much more aware of it, because also we have social media, and social media is a really great source of information. It makes it
mhm,
much easier to obtain all this information. Whereas you think
mhm,
about it, our parents didn't have access to it. I mean,
mhm,
I don't know if it's my dad who told me, but I think they used to write letters. That's how you'd find out if someone's abroad. Like, that's how you'd communicate
mm.
with them. And I'm like, that seems so lonely. Like, oh my goodness. Like, the
Yeah.
only way you can communicate with your loved one is via letter. Like,
I know. I
so
know.
just that just tells you what level of information they had. So
Yeah.
I do give them a pass in regards to that, to be honest. But the problem
Mm.
is a lot of harm. There's some good things that are passed down, but there's also a lot of um, harmful and not good things that are passed down that limit our view of money because it's coming from a limiting view that our grandparents and great grandparents had. And
Mhm.
so, and you know how it is in African society. It's like you kind of don't question your
Mhm.
authority, the authority. So you're being told this is what it is, and so your mind is just like, okay, this is what it is, and then it um, um, takes you getting to being an adult, and then an adult even later on, you know, then you
Mhm.
realize, wait a minute, no, just no, not necessarily this. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, because I don't know, we just don't know how. I don't know, making money is just I don't know. I didn't grow up really being taught much about making money. Now, I grew up being taught how to save money.
Oh,
At least I can say
yes.
my parents taught me how to save. And I think that's a good thing also because I know there are people who also don't know anything about saving. And I know I had a
Yeah.
little piggy bank and my parents would encourage me to save and they'd also give me an allowance and they'd really encourage me to be like to I'd have to spend within my allowance and if I went over my allowance then it was on me. Like
Yeah.
and that
Mhm.
and I'm not gonna lie, that actually is helpful in a sense that it kind of gives you those little tidbits of budgeting and saving because I know some people don't even have that. So I
Mhm.
had that growing up. Um,
Yeah.
so saving and trying to keep within budget. But then now when it comes to generating that wealth, which is what I currently like working on, no, I didn't get lessons on that. And I didn't
Yeah.
see a lot of people getting lessons on that either.
Yeah, no, very, very true. Savings or save your money was definitely the mantra growing up, and yeah, in a way that was like just do it. And I don't even know if this is a thing, but there's also like now being where I'm at, there's also this thing of where I look back where there's I'm also unlearning that like the toxic idea of saving where it's like I feel bad if I spend on something that is a little bit more luxurious. Like I'm unlearning that
Mm,
because in my mind I'm just thinking of the mantra was save. So when you're now in a world that gives you options and you look at the
mm-hmm,
price and you're like, should I buy this based on my personality? But the pink one is a little bit more expensive than the blue one. But my favorite color is pink. So like I just think of my childhood where it's like save. So it doesn't matter the color. So it was really ingrained um, in me in this idea of saving that in some way unlearning that. But
mm-hmm,
like you, I the idea of investments or making your money multiply or work for you. And I think it's also in line with this idea of being entrepreneurial because
mm-hmm,
going back to that piece of what do you do with the land where it's like there's so much there's so many ways you can make that land work for you but the mainstream method is put a house and then let someone rent. But then you can also put a business. You can also have a business, rent that land, and then they can just pay you, you know, for the rent. So there's just definitely limitations there. Now, this is my thing with, as you said, we're now in this world of information. Don't you feel like there's just so much pressure because you're now exposed because like for me because I'm now exposed to all this knowledge and I can instantly get it from all angles, social media, so there's Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, there are books, there are podcasts, there's like everything. So I'm like, oh my goodness, what's going on? At least when I first started I was like, I am still trying to figure out what a mutual fund is. Like I am literally trying to understand it. Like I keep reading the finance book, and it's getting in to my head,
Hmm.
and then yeah, I lose it a little bit, and then I come back, and it's like, oh, okay, so this is how this works. Like, okay, so I think it took me a while to finally just feel grounded in my in what they, the different options I had. Um and it's just the pressure, because also the same time that you're spending to learn, someone else already, maybe, with their parents already teaching them, they grew up in childhood knowing about this stuff. For me, it's taking me a little bit of time to be comfortable with it, because I'm just used to saving, and then you start realizing like, oh, there are different options. But then now I'm feeling the
Hmm.
pressure, because I'm like, oh, yeah, like, oh gosh, I've just started. And then when you speak to friends or family, and you're like, oh my goodness, what are you doing with your money? Like, oh, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And I'm like, it's just, I don't know. There's just a lot of pressure now that I'm in this world of information. I don't know if you feel the same way.
um, yes and no,
Mm.
and I'm leaning more towards no.
Okay.
Uh, this is where me being able to compartmentalize things, which I had to do in medicine, comes into
Mm.
play. I think
Yeah.
there's definitely social media can become overwhelming, and that's the negative side of social media. There's
Mm.
it can be just too much information, too much of this, too much of that, and this is where you have to know when to like stop and like not
Mm.
read too much, not watch too much, not consume too much social media if it gets you to a point when you're getting overwhelmed. But I think for me, that's why there are people who like get off social media and they're like, "Oh my goodness, no, I am very much against social media," and I don't get it because I really tailor my social media to my needs. And
Mm.
if there's something that's negative that comes up, oh, I remove it as soon as I can, and I don't entertain negative things on social media because there's so much positivity and there's so much I can learn from social media. Now,
Mhm.
I think when it comes to the pressure, I think I've just resigned myself to this is my reality. This is
Mm.
where I am starting with finances, and that's the most I can do is to make to start from there and build up from there. Because
Mm.
yeah, I can see so and so this person maybe came from a wealthy family who taught them how to build and make generational wealth. They'll obviously
Mm.
be ahead of me in regards to that, but I can't change that. So because I can't change that in my head, I'm just like, you know what, it
Mm.
is what it is, and I have to. The most important thing is, am I doing something to change my situation? Sometimes,
Mhm.
where the yes comes into play, it might feel a bit unfair. And I think this
Mhm.
is where social media might make you feel like you're behind because you feel like, why does so and so have this? Why am I behind in this? Why am I that? And I do definitely go through those feelings, but
Mhm.
I'm very good at stopping myself and just being like, well, it is your situation. If you can't, it's your reality. So just do the most to grow from it. Because I think
Mhm.
that's the most important thing is, are you actually growing from it? Because you might
Mm.
be not starting at the same level field as someone who has generational wealth, but then you could definitely surpass them. Like, it's just a matter of, are you smart with your money decisions and all that? And I really
Mhm.
enjoy learning about these things. I enjoy sitting down and hearing the stuff as you were making the example about mutual funds and all that. I'm
Mhm.
still learning about those things. And like stocks, particularly stocks, are the ones that really are a bit hard for me to grasp the best way to do it. And I have some colleagues who actually are doing day trading. And
Mm.
one of my colleagues, he was trying to teach me how to do it. And I'm just like, huh? I'm like, wait, like
Mm.
what? And it's, you know
Mm.
what? One of the books I'm gonna buy is is it buying stocks and something, investing for dummies?
Ah,
I am
yeah.
going to legit go basic and buy that book because
Mm-hmm.
it's just it's where I'm at. Because I what I realized is you have to have a good foundation to also build these things up. And so I guess I'm
Correct.
at the stage where I am making sure my foundation is strong, my knowledge is strong, and I
Mm-hmm.
move on from there. It is what it is. So I think that's where I come from in regards to all the knowledge out there. Now, choosing also where I can also get really overwhelmed is where do I get financial information from? Because there's so
Mm.
many courses out there, so many YouTube websites, so many all of this, and it's so hard to know what to pick in. And I just listen here and there, and usually if I vibe with someone, I listen to their stuff, or if I feel like what they're saying is really um, where I'm at, I listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, being a physician, I also tend to follow like other physicians who are on this path to financial freedom, which includes part of financial freedom is including building generational wealth. And so I try to focus on people who are kind of relative situations as me and
Yeah.
gain information from them because there's too much information out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, 100%. There is so much information. And the thing with that information is that it doesn't account for your personality, and just the
Mm.
way you live or like to live. Because I usually say this to people that your money carries your personality. So money has a personality. So your values are expressed through money and how you spend it or what you do with it. And so, going back to that example of someone might say, because it has been the mantra of the century, someone might say, buy land. It does make sense in the sense that land is a long term asset that keeps on appreciating. But what if
Mhm.
you are a natural traveler? And you don't see yourself living in one country for like, I don't know, for forever. You see yourself moving from one country to another because that's just your personality. Is
Mhm.
land really, I mean, yeah, someone can say just, yeah, just buy it and forget about it. Maybe that's a strategy. But also it could be like, well, in 5 years I plan to be in Japan. In the other 5 years I plan to be in New Zealand. So it so all these suggestions, all these solutions, all these ways of making money don't ultimately tell you who you really are, and you have to sort of figure that out for yourself. Um,
Mm.
but
But I would
yeah,
say about that is there's
mm,
definitely there's also advice out there that will suit you. So
mm,
you have to know yourself first because
yeah,
there's definitely money information out there that there's someone who's in your boat and you just have to find them. But you have to know your boat first. Do you know yourself first before you
yeah,
find them? There's definitely people out there. It's just it might be that the popular ones might not necessarily fit your situation or your needs.
yeah. No, very true, very true. Yeah, no, it is a journey. It actually is a journey. Um, And I think it's something where if you really want to build generational wealth, it's definitely an aspect to consider and look into. Um and it's a step up from just the buy the land and then that's it. Um but there's something that I've also realized, going back to this idea of how are we spending our money and how it's impacting our generational wealth, um, is that Ubuntu-ness, the idea of giving back.
Mm,
Because I'm talking about, obviously, we're coming from Kenya and Zambia, and we know that the economies of these two countries are not as as I guess as high in terms of like the amount of money that people are making, when you compare it to Western countries. Um,
Mhm.
and so, and I'm sort of wanting to speak to people, let's say Africans who are in the diaspora, where they come to the Western world and their earning potential, or I guess the amount of money that they make, is higher. It may not even be higher in terms of meeting their needs in the Western world, but definitely better than the income that people are getting back home. And so there is that aspect of how do we handle. I think people have called it black tax. I've heard of the term black tax, where you are serving your family, but while you're serving your own self and family. And I'm just wondering, like, what your thoughts are on how that is impacting also our ability to create wealth for the future and future generations.
Mm. I think that's one of the, when I said I said earlier that sometimes some of the things that are passed down or they're taught are not necessarily the best. And I think this is
Mm,
one of the things that has been a hindrance in creating generational wealth. Dare I say, in Africa, um, because there is a beauty in Ubuntu-ness. There's a beauty in being your brother's keeper and trying to help other people come up. But I think the
mm,
problem is people do it at their own expense.
mm,
That's where the issue comes. Like, people do it at their own expense. And what do I mean by this? Part of your own expense is you're not preparing for your future.
mm,
That is part of it. Because if you look at a lot of the comments on YouTube recently and all that, when people talk about black tax, they say, we can't avoid it for the most part. So how do you handle it? Well, are your basic needs taken care of? That's one. Make sure your basic needs are taken care of. And then also
mm,
make sure that you're planning for your future. So whether it's that's investments, savings, however you are, whatever your plan is to build your own wealth, and hopefully it becomes generational wealth that you can maybe pass on.
mm,
Make sure that's taken care of before you now start helping other people. Like,
mm,
basically have that taken care of first. But a lot of times you don't see that that has not been the case, has been happening. And people don't know how to say no as well.
mm,
Because now it becomes oh, I say no, and your family member will be like, how dare they say no to me? Or it just, you'll have end up there'll be negative repercussions for you saying no, or you might be alienated or something like that. It's because we're coming
mhm.
from, it's for some reason there are also some family members that feel like they're entitled to your money. I've seen this in
Yeah.
I have seen this in, growing up. I've definitely seen black tax play out growing up. And I
Mhm.
definitely have seen how it's affected my parents now. Um and I just feel like it's so important now for us to learn how to deal with it. Meaning there
Mm,
has to be boundaries. So, and as much as I hate the fact that it exists,
mm,
and we have to deal with it. So the question is, what's the plan? And as I said, make sure you pay yourself first and
mm,
then you pay others. Because someone said something really striking. They were like, well, if you drop dead and you're not able to send this aunt, that uncle, this cousin or something the money, their life will go on,
yeah.
and they might find someone else to, you know, get the money from. You might not. If you happen to, maybe it's just a collapse and you happen to still be alive, where are you going to get the money from? It's like their lives
Mhm.
will move. So it's like, pay yourself first, then do that. Now, I still feel like, in a sense, I think that's the best way forward for a lot of us Africans to
Mhm.
actually be able to invest in generational wealth. Because a lot of people, they can't even invest in generational wealth because they're too busy paying black tax. So there's
Mhm.
no way they can actually do it. But if we learn how to tailor our expenses and include paying ourselves, that means investing, saving for future retirements and all that, then, and also having a budget for black tax, being like, this is what I can afford to send, and I cannot
Mm,
afford to send more, then this will help. I mean, at least
mhm,
I think it's at least the beginning. Ideally, it's the most perfect scenario is if you don't have to pay any kind of black tax, because
mm,
that way that money that would have gone to black tax, if you're smart, could have gone into you building generational wealth. And I think this is where some parts of the Western world have an advantage, because if they
mhm,
don't have to worry about that kind of tax, paying families and stuff, they can use that money to build a generational wealth. So that means you're
mhm,
starting at a bit of a disadvantage, but you just have to have a
mhm.
plan on how to deal with it, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, that's those are really good points, Zell. You mentioned something about how some people feel entitled to your money. And it just made me think about people mixing love and money. So making the assumption that, like, okay, because you are connected to me, however you may be connected to me, I am entitled to your money. Or people have expectations like, I helped you 3 years ago, or when you were a little kid, or, people have these emotional associations or connections, and they sort of feel like, well, this is my time to claim back what I did for you. And it's like, okay, I don't remember that we signed a contract, or like, I said, you said, if I, if you did this, I'm going to reward you with money. So there's just a mishmash. Like, people are just mixing love and money, which makes it really um hard for people to make that separation. So I'm sure people do feel guilty at the idea of, they look at their money and they say, okay, um John Doe needs a pair of shoes or something, or needs something. It might not be a pair of shoes, but let's say needs something. And then, or do I put this money away and save it or invest it or do something else that could benefit maybe the both of us later on? But then, because there's this almost like, there's this emotional, very strong emotional tie. And if you don't send the money, it kind of is like, well, you're ungrateful, you're stingy, you don't, like, you're forgotten about us. I'm sure there are people that experience that sort of backlash. Um, and then, if you're in a world where, okay, you still want to be connected to your family, but your family can't see you for who you are as a person, it's associated with you and your money. So it's like, oh, this is our family relative, that the stingy one, the one who has money but never gives the money. So you're almost, in a way, even without your own knowledge, you could be judged and put in a certain box, because, yeah, because somehow people connected you, that the fact that you didn't give them money kind of makes you less of a relative, or, so there's, I think it's so strong that people are probably driven to just keep giving, because they don't want to
Hmm.
appear like they're the bad ones in the family. But yeah, so it's becomes not so easy to just say no. um in that regard.
Yeah, but I feel like it's a tough one, because it's part of the thing that we have to deal with if we're going to build generational wealth. So you kind of have to take that step forward and be the one that takes a stand for something,
Mm-hmm.
if you're actually going to build generational wealth, if you come from if you come from such a scenario. um
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right. Or, if it, and I think it also depends on the people or family members, like, if they are, have the same mindset as you, it you could bring them along the journey to say, this is what I'm going to do different, do you like, I'm planning, I visualize that we have enough money to do this in 5 years time, but for now let's just invest, and then in 5 years time, we'll have more money to use on this. So I think if it's possible to bring your friends and your family members along, I think then it will help, so that it doesn't feel like it's only one person carrying the entire load for the entire family or community. But as you said, Zell, if you are in that situation where you are, you are that one lone ranger, then you just make the sacrifice and hope people understand eventually what you've been trying to do all along. So that just makes me tired, Zell, talking about that. It's clearly black tax. It's like something just like so taxing. I know, no pun intended, but yeah, just that thought just makes me so tired thinking about it. Um, but yeah, um, we have reached the top of the hour. It went by so fast. That's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything else you'd like to add onto this?
No, I guess I'll just say, I guess we literally just been talking about a lot about our foundations when it comes to uh, building generational wealth. We haven't actually talked much about actually building it, but I like the fact that we have started a conversation as to this is how we view generational wealth, and this is what we, what this is what's been impacting it. And yeah, it's really good to go back to the roots, and I like that.
Yeah. Oh, nice. So what we could do is this could be part one. And I think usually when we start a topic, we sort of set the groundwork, and
Mm-hmm.
then we can keep it. And the thing is, talking about wealth and money, it's a lot. There's just so much. um and let's just say this is our part one, and we'll probably have another episode on this later on. um but yeah, no, I've enjoyed it, and I think we've definitely identified like one gap in our spaces where we definitely need to learn more about money, and sort of start to embrace that entrepreneur spirit to actually do something, um with like, for example, land in this particular case. So no, I've enjoyed it. This is great. So hope you guys have also enjoyed listening to this topic. And if you have any feedback for us, please leave your comments. You can leave your comments on our Instagram page, and also on Spotify. Um, and you can write to us at the feminine outliers at gmail.com. And yeah, continue to listen, like and subscribe on all the major podcast platforms. That's where you can find us. So we are on Spotify, we are on Apple Podcasts, and we are on YouTube. I have to say this. I don't know. I think we said it last time. Hopefully we did. But you don't have to listen to us on a podcast, like these apps. You can literally turn on you can, yeah, turn on your laptop and just tune into YouTube. I know YouTube is everywhere. So that's pretty exciting. And subscribe on YouTube. That's just so
Mm-hmm.
fun. I'm excited. Um
Like and subscribe.
like and subscribe and share it with your friends and family. Or if we've said something that just clicks and the light bulb goes off, or you think of someone in your circle that's like, oh my goodness, you need to hear what these people are talking about, please let them know. And when you let them know, let them like us and let them subscribe, so that you can know when our next episode is on. So this is it. Until next time, have fun, live large, and don't be afraid